Welcome to Season 4, Episode 11 of the Outlap F1 Podcast, part of the Ship It Studios Podcast Network, and this is the 2022 Australian Grand Prix race review. I am your host, James, along with my wonderful co-hosts, Deanna and Andy. John has the night off. I know I'm ecstatic. I've been buzzing since late last night. Andy, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I mean, considering where I thought my team would be at the start of this weekend to where they are at the end of this weekend, I'm pretty jazzed myself. So yeah, this ended up being not the knockdown drag out P1 fight that we all were kind of hopeful and expecting, but it was, I thought, a dang good, entertaining race.
I did enjoy the race. What about you, Deanna? What'd you think?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I think we kind of saw a little bit of a switch around in the pace of a bunch of the midfield cars. So I'm really excited that it seems pretty tight, basically all the way down the grid, bar kind of who's out front at the current moment. Liability inside as well. Some issues up there, but I think kind of the rest of the pack looks pretty close, which is always fun and exciting.
Very true. So before we get into more detail on all of that, I need to remind everybody you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Discord, Reddit, and YouTube at Outlap F1 Podcast. Of course, you can check out our link tree on our Twitter profile page. If you are listening, do us a solid and click the like button or the 5-star button on the Apple Podcast and Spotify, or if you're watching on YouTube, click like and subscribe. It'll help us out. You can email the show at chatnow@outlapf1.com. Check out our website, which I am running almost perfectly at www.outlapf1.com. I got to remember to update that after we're done here. You can check out episode F1 for Beginners, back on episode 4 of this season. If you are new to the sport, enjoy the dominance that is Charles Leclerc and learn some more things during that episode. You can also check out Deanna's show, Relapped, where she has her live Australian Grand Prix reaction. So you can check her out late at night on the East Coast watching the race. And then Outlap F1 Nation. Andy, I know we got an update. Hit me with it.
We have 2 new supporters coming on to the Outlap F1 Nation this week. Paul Weaver, shout out to you, and Quentin Warden. We talked about you on Wednesday, but again, another shout out for you. And thank you very much for joining the hashtag Outlap F1 Nation. You join such esteemed people as Cody Walsh, Kevin Kelly, Regan Stanzik, Timothy Brown, Mary Brown, Jonathan Scott, and Matt Polanski from the Red Sector MotoGP podcast. They had themselves one heck of a busy weekend with all the action at COTA. That looked like we got through it without any mention of bumps. So good on Circuit of the Americas. Looks like the repaving has done its job. And shout out to the Red Sector guys always.
Yes, thank you, Paul and Quentin. You can also support the show like them by going to the Anchor Outlap support page. There's a link for that in our show notes, where you can donate anything you want, $1, $5, anything you can give will go right back into the show. Of course, you can always check out Manscaped at manscaped.com and use code OUTLAP, that's OUTLAP, for 20% off and free shipping. That'll help the show as well. And just a shout out to our boy Vincenzo. First off, congratulations on the new little one, the newest member of the Tifosi. And you can check out his clothing line, I guess we'll call it, the F1guy.com, where I actually received a shirt thanks to John sending me a birthday present. The Scuderia is back t-shirt, and I could not agree more with what the t-shirt says and represents. All right, so let's get into the headline of the day. And for that, Andy, why don't you start us off?
I kind of have 2. So the first one is Charles Leclerc. Boy, he's taken the high ground on this championship. We're 3 rounds in, and he's got the math on his side big time already. I think it's actually his championship to lose. And then the other headline of the day would be just this trend that we're going to see, I think, as we continue to move forward in this championship. To finish first, you must first finish. Reliability woes, crashes, and some cars that are almost impossible to drive means it's a bit of a free fall all up and down the grid. Wow.
Yes. Well said. Deanna, what do you got for a headline? Looked like you were thinking of one right on the spot.
Yeah. No, similar to Andy, I mean, it's Leclerc is in the driver's seat for this championship. He looked pretty much untouchable today, added some RedBull reliability issues, and it's looking pretty good. And he has had the largest lead, or a larger lead than anybody did in 2021. So, yeah, looking pretty good for him, even though we're only 3 races in.
You know, the Cubs fan in me like shudders every time you guys say that about Ferrari looking good for the championship this year because I've been hurt way too many times, but I do feel very confident 3 races in. My headline is okay, but okay. And Charles Leclerc told his race director today during the race he wanted to keep putting out fastest laps. They tried to explain to him, it's okay, you don't have to anymore. But it's a damn good thing he did, which I'll get into a little bit later. So we could have lost that 1 point, which could become very, very big. Even though the lead is big right now, we have a long, long way to go. All right, so moving on, we go to our qualifying recap. And as always, I hand that off to Andy.
Yeah, so our qualifying session actually starts off with a disqualification, and that would be for one Alex Albon, who, while he did set a lap time, was unable to provide the required fuel sample. Therefore, he gets booted from qualifying and had to start last on the grid. Not finishing or setting a time also was Lance Stroll in what is going to be a very, very painful weekend for all of the Aston Martins. So no classification for him. So we actually start off, our first classified runner is Nicholas Latifi in P18. P17 was Sebastian Vettel, who that dude should go buy his mechanic some sort of big dinner because they got that car back together and he managed to set a lap time. Wasn't necessarily all that fast, but he managed to get out there after having to change his engine. So Vettel is in P17. P16 was Kevin Magnussen. P15, Mick Schumacher. Haas is back-to-back there. P14, Joe Granu. P13 was Yuki Tsunoda. P12 was Valtteri Bottas. P11 was Pierre Gasly, just missing out on Q3. In P10, we find Fernando Alonso. He might have been a lot higher up if not for his crash in Q3, so he did not set a time in Q3. P9 was Carlos Sainz. P8, Esteban Ocon. P7, Daniel Ricciardo. P6 was George Russell. P5 was Lewis Hamilton. P4 was Lando Norris. P3 was Sergio Checo Perez. P2 was Max Verstappen. And P1 with a lap time of 1:17.868, Charles Leclerc.
Yeah, the only guy to get it into the minute 17s. What a lap that was. I think my biggest takeaway from qualifying probably actually had to be Alonso. I've never been a big Alonso guy, but it is starting to get exciting seeing what he's been doing in brief stretches with the Alpine. And I was kind of rooting for him there at the end to at least get in the top few spaces. Obviously, didn't want him on pole, but looked like he was putting together quite the lap before ultimately binning it there.
He was. I mean, he had been near the top 3 for most of the qualifying sessions and was setting purple sectors, at least on his first lap, and just lost it and ended up in the wall. What could have been for Fernando Alonso. I've always said, if you give that guy a sniff, he comes alive. Well, he had himself a fairly big whiff this weekend and was trying to push like crazy, but it ultimately just didn't work out for him in the end.
Yeah, very true. Deanna, any takeaways from qualifying from you?
It was definitely an interesting one. Stroll kind of getting himself into an interesting incident with Latifi, to say the least. And then you also kind of got to feel for Alonso, unlucky with that car failure. And then same with Sainz, had a bunch of issues with his Q3, got his first lap aborted because of the red flag. The second one, they had trouble starting up his car, so they get the second warm-up lap and could only do P9, which was unfortunate, which kind of snowballed into the rest of his race as well. But yeah, not great for Ferrari on that side.
Yeah, on that side of that garage for sure, which we'll get into in a minute as we get into the finishers of the race. But yeah, I mean, the Lance Stroll thing and Latifi, it's like I tweeted it, but is there anybody in the world that misses Mazepin more than Latifi should? Because with Mazepin gone and fans focus on him and hating him and how terrible he was, now Latifi's straight up exposed again and is just it's ridiculous. And his father, I know, brings in a lot of money and it's huge for the team, but at some point he's going to be a net negative and just costing Williams too much. So I'm assuming they had to tell the dude hey, we don't care where you finish this race. Just finish in one piece because there's a cost cap. They're going to run out of money.
Well, I think it's kind of battle of the Canadian billionaire sons for doing doing the worst job this season because Stroll has had some adventures as well. So it's been tough down there.
Yeah, and I'm never going to defend Stroll, don't get me wrong, but Latifi just seems to be on another level of just shit.
Well, it just feels like one thing goes wrong, and, he has the thing that happens last year in Abu Dhabi, and I don't think he's actually gotten over that. And it just seems like whenever pressure gets applied, he's cracking under it. The move and the incident with Stroll, I don't know that I blame that all on Latifi. I think that is as much of a 50-50. They were both being really, really dumb at the same time type of incident as you can get. But, he is struggling big time. And last year of his contract, might he not make the end of it? I don't know. I mean, Williams, reserve driver is an American. So, that there's some hope there maybe. If Latifi doesn't get it together soon, I can't imagine Doralton Capital wants to put up with that for too much longer.
Yeah, that'll definitely be something to keep an eye on as we get closer to silly season here. All right, so that's it for qualifying. Let's go ahead and move in and discuss the race. And with that, we're going to move on to the back markers. And we can start with Carlos Sainz, who just, could more things happen, more bad things happen to one guy in a weekend? Every time you looked, something else was bad happened to him. Super unlucky. I was actually looking forward to his race a lot because I wanted to see what he could do starting way out of position. Because clearly the Ferrari, I think it's safe to say, is the class of the field where we stand right now. And so seeing him starting in, 10th place, I'm like, hell yeah, I'm going to see some overtakes and see Carlos, get a little aggressive here. And then they had to change the steering wheel at literally the last minute. And that just waterfalled into him having start issues. And then the second lap he was out, beached it. And then that was pretty much it, which was a bummer. It ended his 17 race point streak and 31 race finishing streak, which are both the longest active on the grid. So I should check and see who actually is the active leader in both of those. But it was definitely disappointing for him. It's almost a good thing in a weird way for me that Sainz struggled again today and got no points, because I never really had a huge worry that the team was going to focus more on Sainz over Leclerc unless Leclerc had this kind of terrible start. But now I think it's really cut and dry, no argument whatsoever. The focus will solely be on Leclerc as far as the driver championship goes. But I think Sainz is going to get stronger and stronger in the Ferrari. And overall, I'm not worried about him. Just a lot of bad luck right now.
Yeah, definitely qualifying was bad luck. But today, I think this was the first time in a long time we saw Carlos Sainz make a mistake. Normally, even if he gets himself in a bad position, he's kind of cool, calm, and collected. But I think he just kind of the frustration got the better of him. And he was a little bit optimistic making that move and then beached it. And that's the first time I think we've seen him make a mistake like that in a very long time. So I don't think the pressure of that kind of battle is getting to him. I hope not. But I think he'll call it back, but it definitely hasn't been the greatest start to the season or not as good as I thought he would do.
Definitely a fair point there.
Yeah, I still want to see what it looks like when he has a clean weekend. This was anything but a clean weekend. And I do agree with you, Deanna. I think it was just, the red mist came out and even the most calm, collected of everybody on that grid is sometimes subject to it. And that's what can happen when you get on tilt. And he got on tilt and tried to make a move that he probably shouldn't have made, that, upon analysis and everything else, he'll probably say, I never should have done that. And, he'll learn from it, move on, and hopefully be the stronger for it.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and move into Sebastian Vettel now, who's had a terrible start to the season, missed a couple races due to COVID, and now his first race weekend is definitely one of the more forgettable ones of his career. Just capped off by spinning, of course. Who else but Vettel? I've been calling for it for a few years, but Andy, you said he's got to take his team out to a nice big dinner for getting the car ready. I would suggest he doesn't go way overblown on the budget, because it looks like he might be living on a fixed income. It might be time to retire.
Yeah. Almost, it's painful. It feels painful to say it, but the body language doesn't look very positive. The car doesn't seem very drivable from either driver, from him or Stroll. You could put probably Charles Leclerc or LewisHamilton or MaxVerstappen in that car, and I doubt that they would do a whole lot better right now. That thing is a handful and a half. And yeah, it just looks like it might be the racing god sending you a sign, Seb. It may be time. He's going to go down in history as a great driver. He's got 4 world championships. His CV is his legacy is set. I don't know what else he's going to try to get out of this season because it just looks painful.
Yeah, and you can kind of tell, especially kind of lacking that experience from the first 2 races. He had one incident where he went into the gravel because he just misjudged the braking point. So he's definitely been hampered by that. I mean, hopefully it gets better as he kind of gets more used to the car and kind of gets back into the groove. But yeah, it was an awful, awful weekend. Yeah,
they said a stat or something like he had 26 laps this entire weekend. That's not good.
Not good. So yeah, I guess maybe he'll have a lot of simulator time before Imola here in a couple weeks, but not looking too good for either Aston Martin driver so far. All right, so the third driver that also did not finish the race, Max Verstappen, and man, the struggle is real right now at Red Bull in terms of reliability. Just not a great day. It seemed like he never really had a shot at Leclerc except for the second safety car restart. When Leclerc made a small mistake, that was really Max's only chance to kind of fight a little bit, and it really wasn't much of anything. And then at one point later in the race, Leclerc hit that fastest lap. Then Max actually punched back with the fastest lap. I was like, oh, okay. And then that was it for Red Bull. He was on fire. So, yeah, I mean, Deanna, what do you think about this Red Bull right now and Max Verstappen behind the wheel of it?
It's just unfortunate. And then they said that they thought it was a different problem than what happened in Bahrain. And then you've kind of seen different issues for Perez and Tsunoda and Gasly. And so there's just, I think, a lot of concerns on the reliability side. But then on top of that, like, they weren't close to Leclerc at all today. I mean, granted, Verstappen locked up at one point and kind of took life out of his tires, but in that first stint, about 20 laps in, he was over 8 seconds behind. And then I don't think ever got closer than like 4.5 seconds. That was after pit stops, but it just was not even close, even if that car did make it to the end of the race. So I think there's definitely a couple worrying things over at Red Bull for trying to stay in for the whole season here. But yeah, it doesn't look great right now. Hopefully they can turn it around, but we'll see.
In the interim, I need Ferrari to get as many points as possible while Red Bull's struggling with the reliability, because I think once they figure it out, that car is fast. And that brings me to my question for you, Andy. Christian Horner had a quote today about, I'd rather have a fast car that I need to fix than a slow, reliable one that I need to make fast. So where do you stand on that debate? Would you rather have a fast, unreliable car or a slow, reliable one?
I'd probably have the one with the raw pace, to be honest with you, because you can get on top of reliability. That's something that's in your purview. That's something you should be able to control and figure out. What you hope is that you don't have to sacrifice pace for that reliability. A lot of times, and as a McLaren fan, I can vouch for the Honda years. It was always, I used to always scream, well, why don't they just turn up the Honda engine and let the damn thing blow up? Why are they only running it at 80% power? I mean, this is useless. What are you learning? But obviously it came good. Obviously they weren't with McLaren, but with Red Bull last year, and they won a world championship because of it. So, yeah, but I mean, to answer your question, give me the car with pace. Give me the car that's easier to drive. I'll find a way to make that thing work and get it across the line.
And so then for the rest of the back markers that did finish the race, you got Fernando Alonso in 17th, Latifi 16th, Yuki Tsunoda, a quiet day, I feel like, for him in 15th, and then the Haas drivers in 14th and 13th with K-Mag behind Schumacher. So with this group, Alonso, a little bit of a note, kind of a weird day strategy-wise for him, and then at the end of the day would have gotten the fastest lap at the time, but thankfully Charles Leclerc got that one too, so showed some pace there at the end, but otherwise kind of a forgettable day, huh, Andy?
Yeah, I mean, the strategy call didn't make any sense. I mean, you were presented with a track where it was still, even with all the DRS zones and the modifications and anything else, fairly difficult to overtake. So why would you then try to go long on a set of hard tires? I get that, at least to try to get up there. Why he didn't stop under that first safety car is kind of beyond me, because, then he comes in the VSC, switches over to the medium tires, which I think also nobody realized how bad that front left was graining for everybody. So he did not have the tool in his toolbox to try to get through the field, and he just couldn't do it. And therefore, that tire went off, and that was basically the end of his day. Again, the weekend that could have been for Alonso and Alpine had Q3 gone according to plan.
Yeah, I can definitely see Alpine making some noise here as the season continues once they figure out some of their little issues. And then we already talked about Latifi's day, so we're not really going to get back on that. Yuki, like I said, kind of a quiet day, so not really much to add there. And then Deanna, Haas, their pace kind of disappeared this weekend. Do you think this is like a track-specific thing or maybe a bigger issue?
Yeah, my guess would be track-specific because they looked, at least in the hands of Kevin Magnussen, the first 2 races, I think, pretty good. Yeah, it must have been something about this track. Kevin also was another one that went long on hards, pitted under VSC, and came back out on mediums, and that just ended up not working. Just because the field, I think, after the safety car, it just had not spaced out long enough. Had that safety car not happened, or just been a VSC, I think that would have been a different story. Because you kind of saw Albon going later, and we'll get to that later. But so it just didn't work for K-Mag, and then had that blistering on the mediums at the end, so just kind of fell back through. And then Schumacher had his own eventful day, was kind of getting close to the end of the points, but had like lockups and went wide and just kind of all sorts of adventures throughout the day. So just a bit of a mess of a weekend. Not as bad as a Aston Martin, but
Yeah.
not great.
Yeah. I mean, last year, Haas would have been happy with a 13th and 14th. So what was it, the first or second safety car when Schumacher had his real close incident?
It was the first one.
Moment.
Yeah.
It was the first one.
Yeah, that was pretty close.
Yeah, how like that is like millimeter perfect for not hitting another car. Damn.
Yeah.
I wonder if he received any kind of like warning or heads up with like the new like MaxVerstappen rule being enforced maybe now with under safety car, since he was probably ahead of whoever that was he almost hit.
They made a note in the like FIA decision when they said no action. They made a note that it said in future drivers briefings they'll make more of a note about there should be the 10 car length thing because he just got caught out. But I think Gasly kind of slowed up in Sonoda and then kind of went there. So apparently they'll talk about it more in the future. We'll see.
Yeah, definitely a scary moment there. Okay, so let's move into the midfield now, where we find Lance Stroll in 12th, Zhou Guanyu in 11th, Albon in 10th, stealing a point, Pierre Gasly 9th, Valtteri Bottas in 8th, Esteban Ocon in 7th, Danny Rick in 6th, Lando Norris in 5th, and Lewis Hamilton in 4th place. So, Andy, your choice. Who do you want to talk about first?
Well, I think the obvious one is Alexander Albon. Mr. Hard Compound Tire basically did an entire race distance on that hard compound tire. I even forgot that they even pitted him. I had some people pointing that out to me on Twitter this morning because I assumed that he had taken the penalty and they were just doing it to prove a point. Well, no, they brought him in on the very last lap, and he goes across the line on the set of soft tires. So he's compliant with the rules. So congratulations, Williams. That's the way to get a point when you probably didn't deserve one on pace. But, as bad as the Alonso strategy call is, that's about as good on the other end for Williams. Great job.
Yeah, it was one of the probably most impressive drives I think Albon has done. There was, for about 30 laps, he had Ocon on 17 lap fresher tires behind him and kept him behind, and he was within a second for a good chunk of that as well. And then he had on the final lap about exactly 20 seconds gap to Zhou, and big props to the Williams pit crew for getting him out that quickly. He came out literally within like I think 2 or 3 tenths of Zhou, and then luckily on those new soft tires kind of pulled away on that final lap there. But yeah, I did not see that coming at all because I watched how poorly it went with the other hard runners, K-Mag and Alonso, and so I figured, and looking at it a few laps earlier, he was going to come out around 15 or 16, but somehow pulled that gap. And yeah, really, really impressive drive.
Yeah, for sure. Great job by Albon. And I kind of forgot about him because earlier in the race, I'm like, he hasn't pitted yet. Like, what's he waiting for? And then by the end of the race, I was so like nervous and waiting for CharlesLeclerc just to end the race. And I kind of forgot all about him until I realized he had a point. I was like, holy crap, where the hell did that come from? So then let's talk about Ocon, I'd say. This is now 3 top 7 finishes this year. So all 3 races he's been in the top 7. Kind of quietly productive, I'd say. I think Alonso's getting a lot more of the attention on Alpine, even though he's kind of making the mistakes. But Ocon looks pretty strong this year, and it kind of makes me think that Alpine's really going to make some noise the rest of the year. What do you think about his day, Andy?
Yeah, I mean, solid. I did not expect, especially given the qualifying pace that Alonso was showing, that the lead Alpine at the end of today was going to be Esteban Ocon. But, there again, here we are. Didn't see it coming, but there he is, 7th place, solid finish. Just put together an overall solid day and just did his job. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be that hard, but I mean, this is kind of where we thought Alpine would kind of be. Can they be world beaters on their best day? Maybe they're a little bit behind, but right here, this is almost exactly where you'd expect them to be. And Ocon did the job today, so good on you. And he had to manage all sorts of temperature issues and stuff late, so getting that car across the line. We'll talk about another team that had to get a car across the line in a minute. Managing big time, but able to get it done. Good job.
And Deanna, your boy Gasly, 9th place, couple points. Pretty disappointing start of the season so far for him, fair to say?
Yeah, it really hasn't been great. I think he was probably running best in Bahrain when he DNF'd. But it's been pretty quiet. He's kind of, I guess, scraped together a couple points here and there. But just, I don't know. I don't know if it's an AlphaTauri issue. Qualifying at P11 kind of just got caught up in the middle in a bunch of DRS trains all day. Also had him off at one point, and that's how he lost out to Bottas.
At the end.
Yeah, so just another kind of meh performance. Not fantastic, not horrible, but hopefully he'll start to kind of be the Pierre Gasly we know and love soon.
And then for Alfa Romeo, you got Zhou Guanyu just missing out on the points there in 11th. Albon, like we mentioned, just barely right in front of him after his late pit stop. And then Bottas, decent day in 8th with 4 points. Like you said, past Gasly right there at the end, took advantage of his lockup. So Alfa Romeo, productive day, I
One
guess.
thing we didn't get a chance to mention during qualifying, this was the first race in 103 races that Valtteri Bottas did not make Q3. Just missing out there. But even so, to get even a couple races in after the Mercedes and after the Williams, that's a hell of a streak. So,
good call out there. Yeah, 3 big streaks were finished this weekend. So, with that, I guess we can now move it to the McLarens. And for that, Andy, it's all you.
Yeah, the story of teamwork kind of overruling all, basically. Lando Norris started 4th. Got mugged by both Mercedes at the start, so that put him down to 6th. Danny Rick was right behind him in 7th. Decent strategy, good McLaren pit stops, 2.4 for both cars. Who knew that it just had to change the formula and this team could learn how to make a pit stop? Who the hell knew that? But good on them for doing that. Shocking, but specifically from a fan. But Lando had some major engine issues late, was managing a whole lot of things, was getting lots of calls from his race engineer, change this switch to here. We're managing an air quote issue, but please just give us more lift and coast, which means we're trying to get this thing home. And then he finally had to tell the team had to tell Ricciardo, look, don't pressure him. We just want to get these points. It's a lot higher up than they thought they would be, especially after the pain of Bahrain. This is 18 points for that team. This is a hell of a points haul for them. Good day. They managed to get Lando home. I know there was a lot of talk on Twitter, especially with this being Danny Rick's home race. Why did they not flip the cars or anything like that? Well, Danny was playing the team game, and good on him for doing it. So he'll be owed a favor, in my opinion, at some point soon.
I think, Andy, these 18 points probably makes it impossible for them to finish it. What was it, 8th place, Jab predicted?
7th?
7th
or 8th? Yeah, he's not here. I didn't get a chance to go, not so much anymore. They rocket to P4. They're right back where we thought they'd be. Look at that.
I had to set you up with the T for that one. So now, speaking of John, we can talk about his boy. And I'll tell you what, I'll never, ever get tired of talking about Lewis Hamilton in the midfield section of the episode. Finished on his teammate, probably an unlucky chain of events that caused him to finish behind George Russell. But at the end of the day, he did, and that's racing. So, the Mercedes got a lot of points today. They continue to get points. They are reliable, I guess. We can say that about at least the Works team. I don't really. I guess I'll give it to one of you two to say some nicer things about
I mean,
him.
I
that's all I got.
I thought from Friday where they looked lost. Like, they were just they didn't that car was bouncing so bad. Just the body language on the whole team across the board. That reminded me of what McLaren looked like in the Bahrain test. Lost, didn't understand it, couldn't get around it. But to rally on Saturday to whatever setup change they did between Friday and Saturday, car got a lot calmer, got a lot racier. Even at some points today, were challenging a bit on Perez, and could have maybe got there if they really pushed. But as we've seen before, I think they're just in the same spot like McLaren is right now. Hey, we got a haul of points. Let's just take what we can get and get the heck out and go to the next race and try to bring an upgrade because they still need it. But this was a heck of a I guess you would call this damage limitation. But, look at this. Mercedes are P2 in the constructors.
Yep.
So they're obviously doing something right.
Yeah, they've definitely are in a place now where they've gotten lucky, especially with Red Bull retiring. They have a solid set of points. And if they do get that car back to where it probably should be, they can still kind of hopefully be in that fight. They've kind of lucked into some of these results, which has been great for them. But yeah, it was a fun little, unfortunately, it was probably going to be a fun little back and forth between Hamilton and Perez. But then I think it was that safety car came out, the second one, which was kind of sad. But at the end of the stint on the mediums, he had caught back up to Perez, which I think that was more of a Red Bull issue than Mercedes pace, but it was fun.
I'm trying to remember if it was FP3 or qualifying when they were really, like the broadcast was really focusing on Mercedes porpoising and Ferrari's porpoising because Ferrari was in the straight, it was, when they showed it was pretty crazy. But then as soon as it's time to turn, it's totally stable again. For the Ferrari anyway, but the Mercedes seems to want to porpoise in the middle of corners, so that's why I think they're struggling way more. They really got to get that figured out because it's kind of killing their pace overall. And Ferrari is just fuck it, we want the performance. You guys can deal with it, and let's go. And so far, it's working out great.
Well,
when we get to Leclerc, I will mention my admiration for doing like this for 58 laps and managing to pull it off because that was pretty amazing.
Well, one thing about Ferrari, kind of on that same point, if they can figure out the porpoising as well, that's going to be very, very dangerous for the rest of the field. If that car gets
any more on rails, woo, boy.
Yes. And on that thought, we're going to take a quick break because I need to refill my drink because when Ferrari wins, I celebrate.
As you should. As you should.
We'll be right back to talk about the podium finishers and then recap driver standings, talk about predictions, and we got some fan emails. So, all right, welcome back to Season 4, Episode 11 of the Outlap F1 Podcast, part of the Ship It Studios Podcast Network. This is the Australian Grand Prix race review of 2022, and we are about to get into the podium. And with that, we'll start off with George Russell getting technically his second ever podium, but I'm considering it his first one because he actually had to have an actual race and finish on the podium. So he definitely, like I mentioned before when we talked about Lewis Hamilton, lucked out a little bit with the safety car timing, but that's racing. And hell yeah, George Russell in second in the Drivers' Championship table. What a day.
I think he's probably the most unhappy P2 championship contender in F1 history right now. Just because you watch his post-race interviews and he just screams of frustration. But hey, look at where we are. But yeah, Lewis's misfortune was George's gain, and that's just part of the game. And that stuff is going to happen. So, but George did the job, got there. They definitely had the pace on both of the McLarens today. These, like we said before, very good rally for Mercedes and for George Russell. Congrats on the podium.
Yeah, I think just in general, it's been a fantastic start for Russell. For the most part, has been at least on the pace in both in the race and in qualifying with Hamilton. If not a little ahead or a little behind, but it's been about about there. So it's been a great start, I think, to his Mercedes career. Even
towards
if
the end
not
there,
quite there, but
towards the end there, when Lewis was behind George, and Lewis started having some overheating issues, it seemed like. So they didn't want him to get any closer to George Russell. If Lewis wasn't having those issues, was Mercedes going to let them race, do you think, Andy?
Historically, they have. That's always been Toto Wolff's call, is that our drivers are free to race. That goes back to the Rosberg Hamilton years. As long as I've seen Mercedes, Schumacher and Hamilton were free to race each other when Hamilton joined the team in 2013. So, I can't imagine that changing unless one of them does something to cause a DNF, which at that point then Toto's wrath comes out, and look out for any tables or headphones or anything like that.
I was kind of hoping that we were going to get to see a little bit of that. I wanted to see George get his elbows out there. But I definitely have a feeling we're going to see that at some point this year, because they seem to be, like Deanna mentioned, George has the pace to stick around with him in that car. And even though the car's not quite there yet, it looks like we might see some action between those two. So I'm looking forward to that. All right, so let's move into Checo Perez in second place. And, man, thank God for Checo when it comes to Red Bull's chances at any kind of Constructors' Championship. Because without him right now, Mr. Consistency, they'd be in a lot worse trouble than they are right now. So, Deanna, what do you think about Checo's day today? Or, I guess, last night?
It was today.
It was technically today.
It was like 22 hours ago, but
it feels like forever ago.
Yes, it does. It feels like 10 days ago. Sergio Perez, I think he had a solid race. Unfortunately, I think kind of lost out a bit in the safety car. So it was behind Russell and had to pass him on track. And then had that tiny little fight with Hamilton as well. And then once Max dropped out, he was staying consistently. I think once he finally got past Russell, had about a 4-second gap to Verstappen and stayed pretty much there, which was good to see him kind of have the pace with Verstappen. But once he dropped out, he was very, very lonely. And then just solid P2. And thankfully didn't have any reliability issues like steaming.
Anything on Checo, Andy?
Well, I mean, Max's loss was Checo's gain. He does inherit the P2. So solid day. I'm pretty sure Red Bull are very happy that they are getting something consistent and reliable from their second driver. That's saving their bacon right now. Right now, he's their number one.
Yes, I was going to say. Yes, currently Verstappen is the second driver, as well as Hamilton is the second driver, and I really love that fact.
Yeah, well, that reminds me too. Something I forgot to bring up with Hamilton was just poor timing, which isn't rare for the F1 broadcast, of them showing or playing the Lewis radio communication about saying, "You guys really put me in a bad spot."
Oh yeah,
the timing of that was just not great.
They were doing that throughout the course of the weekend, where they were taking stuff very much out of context and playing it as if there was a problem. The other example of that I can give you is at the end of FP3, where all of a sudden I'm shocked and gobsmacked that Lando Norris is sitting P1, but he was running out. They didn't fuel the car to do enough of the laps that Lando wanted to do. So they were coaching him and they were just saying, look, change the engine down because we just want to get the car back. Mm-hmm. And they made it sound like his engine was about to go. Well, no, he was running out of gas. Like if you rewind it back 30 seconds, you understand exactly what's happening. And I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to stir the drama. But we got to put it in some context.
Save that for Drive to Survive.
Yeah,
I was going to say, maybe this will be like the Bizarro season where during the actual live broadcast, they're going to change up all the audio. But then during Drive to Survive, they'll actually be at the right time.
They'll actually get the real thing.
Man, this season sucks. All right, so moving on to the winner of the race, Charles Leclerc. I mean, I don't really have anything to say about it. Just kidding. Man. The Grand Slam, Andy. He got the win, obviously. Got pole position, obviously. Fastest lap, and led every single lap, making him only the second Ferrari driver in the last 18 years. To achieve that, Alonso was the last one to do it. Singapore in 2010. So just completely impressive weekend and day for Charles. Like I said earlier, just one small mistake on the second safety car restart where Max kind of had a chance there for a couple corners, but really not any chance at all. Was just putting in fast lap after fast lap after fast lap, asking his team if he needs to keep putting him in. They said there's no worry from anybody. Turns out Alonso did kind of put some pressure on without actually putting the pressure on by having softs at the end there. But he is now 3 for 3 on the season as far as driver of the day goes, which doesn't really mean anything, but I'm going to keep saying it as long as he keeps being the driver of the day. And with this win and fastest lap today, he now has 71 of the possible 78 points that he could have gotten so far this season. So that's like 91 or 92% effective as far as that goes, which is pretty fucking good. And I know I'm not going to steal your thunder about the porpoising, but the fact that he's just dealing with that and still killing it is amazing. You can just really feel the confidence of this team just growing and growing, at least on this side of the garage. Carlos Sainz still some kinks to work out, but things look awesome. Deanna, you said it earlier, but this is a larger margin than anybody had last season that he's got right now. It's 34 points. So I'm not going to count my chickens before they hatch, but as I said on the preview episode, everything is good. I'm going to be super positive about everything. And god damn, do I love you, Mattia Bonanno.
I think we've got our little snippet video right there. I think we've got our next one. But yeah, I mean, what else can you say? I mean, this is a sublime weekend.
I can think of more if you need me to.
Well, no. I'll try. I'll try here. But I mean, it was a sublime weekend. I mean, every time he got challenged, and the perfect example of this is at the end of Q3, where Max got finally tuned into the car and tried to extract everything he could, and he takes P1, and Charles was a half a second quicker after that. And that was really as close as he was of getting challenged at all this weekend. Kind of sort of on another level. So he's got the high ground so much on Max, it's not even funny. He would have all he has to do is basically finish second, and he would have 7 races before Max, if he won and took fastest lap, before Max could overtake him in the points. So from where you thought, the 1 and 1A were the championship contenders, boy, it's advantage Charles right now, big time. Yikes.
Deanna, you predicted Charles to win at the beginning of the season, so how are you feeling right now?
I feel somewhat confident in that prediction at the moment. For once.
Maybe the best prediction you've ever made on the show.
Yeah, but I also predicted it, so that means things will go south pretty quick here.
There's a long way to go.
Yeah.
Hey, as we will talk about when we get to the predictions, when we all agree on something, that's bad for that driver.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true. Thanks for bringing me back down to earth. Appreciate it. All right, so let's go in and talk about the driver standings, top 10. Who wants to go through that for me, since John's name's on there, but he's not with us tonight?
Well, I'll do the drivers if somebody else does the constructors. So
sure.
In P1 is Charles Leclerc, the Monegasque driver in the Ferrari on 71 points. P2, the surprising George Russell from Great Britain in the Mercedes on 37 points. P3 is still Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari with 33. P4, Sergio Checo Perez, the leading Red Bull at this point, on 30 points. P5, Lewis Hamilton, the second placed Mercedes driver, on 28 points. P6, Max Verstappen. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Down to P6 on 25 points. P7, Esteban Ocon in the Alpine. Consistency being the name of the game for him. 20 points for him. P8, Lando Norris in the McLaren. He's up to 16 points. P9, Kevin Magnussen in the Haas. He is on 12 points. And P10, don't forget about him just yet, Valtteri Bottas in the Alfa Romeo on 12 points.
Good stuff. Deanna, you got the team standings for us?
Yes. So in first, we have Ferrari with 104 points. In second is Mercedes with 65 points. In third is Red Bull with 55. Fourth is now McLaren with 24. Alpine has 22. Alfa Romeo has 13. Haas is on 12. AlphaTauri with 10. Williams gets on the board today with 1 point. And Aston Martin has a big fat goose egg.
Not good for Aston Martin.
No.
The pressure on that team from their owner is only going to ratchet up, and we will see how that team responds, because a lot of heads could be rolling. They've had a lot of changes. There might be more quicker than you'd like to think.
Yeah, and that's the other part about, like, the potential Vettel retirement. It's like I just don't see how Vettel's personality could mesh with somebody like Lawrence Stroll. And when things start going crazy, I don't think Vettel's going to want to deal with that shit.
Yep.
Personal opinion, but who knows? All right, so let's go into our fan emails. Got quite a few here as usual, so thank you to everybody who emailed in. And Deanna, I'll hand it off to you for this.
All right, so starting with Rachel Fleming. She says, can we now consider Aston Martin the worst team on the grid after this weekend? All 3 races, they haven't really done anything, and Vettel must be thinking, what on earth have I come back to? Also, if Aston doesn't improve this season, will Vettel retire? I wouldn't blame him. So I think we've kind of talked about this. I still think it's kind of Aston Martin versus Williams for the worst team at the moment. And they've also had, Aston Martin has had Stroll, who is having himself a season, and then have had Hulk that had to come in and replace Vettel for 2 races, so didn't get much time in the car in testing for him. And then Vettel was out for 2 races, so now I'm just kind of getting back to grips to it. So I don't think we've seen probably what this car is quite capable of yet. So maybe they'll turn it around-ish at the end of the season, I mean. But it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good.
I think I would blame Vettel, though, because I would rather he have retired 2 years ago when I predicted it. So besides that, I wouldn't blame him.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm getting from Aston Martin, and this is actually kind of scary. I'm getting Caterham vibes left and right, just because, 1, it's a green car, and 2, Caterham was very much funded by an airline billionaire, so they had plenty of money until he just decided he was done with Formula One, and then he kind of left them on their own. If Lawrence Stroll gets bored, I don't know where that team goes. So yeah, they may be at a crossroads sooner than they ever thought they would be.
Good point.
Yep. All right, so next up, the formula says, my thoughts on the race. 1, George had a great drive and is starting to command his place in the team. 2, Red Bull reliability has already ruined their season. 3, Vettel doesn't have it anymore. This will be his last season, or it should be. Vettel retiring is very popular comments this time around. But yeah, Red Bull, that reliability, I mean, they've probably left, I think it's like 48, 49 points on the table. So you add that to that, they would be right there with Ferrari. So yes, at the moment, I would say so. And then, yeah, I think we touched on George as well. All right. So next,
agree with everything that they said.
Yes.
Good
yes.
stuff.
All right. Next up, Hit the Apex podcast says, thoughts on the Australian Grand Prix. Not the wheel-to-wheel cracker that we wanted, but overall such a great weekend for F1 to be back in Australia. A record crowd of almost 420,000 for the weekend breaks the previous number set back in 1996 when they first raced in Melbourne. Ferrari looking like they have the goods early, and Leclerc is only going to get better. While there'll be a lot of head scratching and concerns going on at Red Bull powertrains now. Hope you all enjoyed the race, even if it was rather early.
So something I wanted to mention there, especially for anybody that might be new to the sport, we've gotten spoiled the first couple races of the season to have as much action we've had between the top 2 drivers. Just to give you a heads up, that's not always going to be the norm. Something you'll find as you get further into Formula One and your fandom grows is that a lot of times the action is in the middle, and you really got to pay attention to that. And if you really want to enjoy a race, it's all about having a second or third screen, having your iPad up, watching all the timing screens, the data channel. Because that's really where you kind of get the meat and potatoes of the races, and you see the strategies playing out. So yeah, especially for newer fans, sometimes that's where the action is. Because you see some people saying today that the race wasn't good, and I mean I completely disagree, and not just because my guy won.
Yeah, and perfect example is they didn't broadcast any of the Lando stuff. So everybody just thought that they were just going slower. And then, I'm sitting here, I'm dying, trying to like, oh God, this is not going to end well. This is Belgium all over again. But then he gets it home. But yeah, I mean that you do have to sometimes pull your entertainment out of a race like this, but that doesn't mean that it's not there. So just go looking for it. You'll find it.
Well, that actually kind of makes me think of a question for both you guys. Like, what's your typical race day setup? I mean, for me, I've obviously got the ESPN feed on the main TV, and then I'll have one TV on a data channel showing me all the timings, and then the other one I'll typically start with like Charles Leclerc on board, but then usually I just kind of wait for whatever battle's looking good, and I'll switch to one of those onboards. as we go. So what's yours look like on Sunday mornings, Andy? Or Saturday nights?
Or Saturday nights. Yeah, I've got the main ESPN feed, commercial free. We pray, we hope that continues to be the case.
Yeah.
We can talk about that in another episode, but that's my main feed. But I also sometimes I have my iPad working for qualifying on the data screen, and it's simply because that is faster than the website. It's faster than the F1 TV feed, so you get it. And you can see all the mini sectors, which is exactly how I think you should watch qualifying, because you'll see who's doing good and where, and you'll be able to, once you kind of get the hang of it, you'll go, that dude's on a lap. Okay, where's he going to go? This could be something, start to pay attention to it. I also will have Lando's usually on board on F1 TV on this machine right here, my laptop. But I've also got like 4 different tabs working. One is a backup of the timing screen because I just have to have that, and sometimes the iPad dies. 2 is, believe it or not, McLaren has what's called their team stream, which is suggested radio from both drivers. So I can listen to Lando, everything that's going on, but I'm also interested about Danny too. I've tried to have 2 up, and that gets a little bit of information and audio overload, so I tend to only focus on one audio separate screen. But then I've got that going. I've got Twitter going. It's sometimes 3 or 4 different screens, but some combination of that. But yeah, it's kind of an information type thing. So, but it's the way I think it just helps you to kind of pull out. If you didn't think this race was entertaining, this is how you find that out.
And Deanna, what's your setup like? I know yours is sponsored by Ace Hardware.
My setup can get pretty complicated because I'm also trying to live stream and screen record and do a bunch of other stuff. So I typically will have on my normal computer, I have 3 screens. So I have on one is the actual race coverage, then I have a data screen going, and then I have kind of all the YouTube, like the comments, or the live chat going, and then kind of all of my other audio and video and all that kind of stuff. Then I have I have the normal F1 data screen, and then I'll have on my iPad as well the phone version of the data that comes out of F1, which a lot of times is better, especially for qualifying. So I like to have that as well as backup, and it still has the old kind of versions of the graphics, which just makes me feel a lot better. I hate the new graphics, and it just I don't need to go on that rant again. Anyway. So I typically don't have onboards just because I got so much other stuff going on, and I haven't figured out a good way to incorporate it. Unless I know there's nothing going on track, I'll just switch my normal feed to it.
And I like the onboards too because you can have I'll have that iPad or that TV turned up with the volume as well because it's not like they're talking the whole time either.
Yeah.
So usually you can when you start hearing more talking, it's like, ooh, something might be going on. Mute the main feed or whatever. So. Yeah.
And then I have a second laptop. I have 2 laptops going as well, and that has Twitter and all this stuff. There's a lot going on.
I could not handle. I don't think I could handle your setup.
No, there's 3 screens on my computer, my iPad, and 2 laptops. That's what it takes for me to get through a race, and I can't even have that. Is happening.
Well, I think the moral is we all get our own dedicated nuclear power plant for when we're watching these races.
Yes.
So
and so you need to donate to the show.
Yes, exactly.
We use a lot of electricity to consume one 2-hour race.
Mm-hmm. But it makes it so much better. It's like if you just open one timing screen, if it's just on your phone, you can get so much more out of the race.
You get, and believe it or not, if you're so inclined, the timing screens also have the BBC radio, which can sometimes be even better than the TV broadcasts. So, and that's usually even ahead of what you're seeing.
That I don't like when it's ahead.
Yeah, I can't stand that. That's the biggest nightmare for me is trying to sync up all the different data screens, because I need it to all be the same. Because I like to react to something when I see it happen actually on track rather than see it on a data screen first.
Insider thing for me, because I'm doing the live tweeting at qualifying usually. I like the fact that I know that's on pole.
Yeah,
here it
that
comes.
Makes a lot more sense for
tweet it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Live tweeting makes a lot more sense for me. I think I would do it if I wasn't filming all the stuff as well. But anyway.
Cool. Nice.
That's the whole
we
thing.
Got next.
All right. This is me.
Still
okay. Eric H says, unbelievable Williams strategy. Yes, it was. And the next East Coast Sharks fan says from Q3 onwards, Sainz had a really rough ending to his weekend. Q3 was a bit misfortunate, being that it seemed like he had a pretty good lap before the red flag came out, right before crossing the line. Do you consider this a one-off for bad luck or something to be concerned about? I think we covered that pretty much earlier.
Yeah, this is just bad luck. I mean, he's still got talent. The car's still really good.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of it all coming together for him.
Yep.
Yeah, agreed.
And then separately, thoughts on Stroll generally. Had the issue with Latifi, though I think some blame was to be shared a bit there. But I think he's generally an aggressive driver. Seems to get penalized a lot based on other aggressive driving / bonehead things he's done in seasons past. Well, there's also one incident this year where he probably shouldn't have gotten the penalty. I think Albon did. Anyway. But yeah, thoughts on Stroll?
Every time something happens with Stroll and the focus is on one of his onboards, we just get reminded that dude just doesn't look at his mirrors ever. He just doesn't use them.
I want to go through all of the FIA documents and see who's the one that pops up the most, at least this season so far, and all of the kind of offenses and all of that kind of noted incidents, because I have a good feeling it might be Stroll. Because he's been, has he finished? No, he has 0 points, but he's been the topic of conversation a lot.
Yeah.
Well, it almost makes me wonder, should we bring back the Does Lance Stroll Get Out of Q1 award for this season? Because he's back to meeting that criteria again. He's kind of an enigma. On his day, he's fast, but he's just kind of a jerk. I don't really know how else to say it. He just strikes me as he's a nice, well-mannered jerk.
Well, on
the racetrack anyway.
He had a good season in 2020.
Yeah.
Then he had an okay season last year, and now I just feel like we're fully regressing back to 2018, 2019. And it's not good.
It's coalescing with how good the car is. I mean, that's always kind of been our kind of show consensus on him, is he's only as good as what the car kind of gives him. He's got a good car underneath him, he can show well. This car is a handful and a half, and he's not getting anything out of it either.
Yep. Okay, so our final fan email is from Glenmore. Says, do you think that Andre Seidel will be a big draw for Porsche / Audi teaming up with McLaren? They have a rich WEC history together. And is Zach the busiest guy in F1? I'll let Andy tackle that one.
So this story. Yeah, well, first of all, nothing has necessarily happened yet. I mean, Andreas would be a natural fit. He did work with, I think, Porsche in a WEC program before. So it would probably there would be some synergy there. I don't know if McLaren is trying to sell. There's all these people saying, apparently Audi offered him $500 million or, a ridiculous amount of money. It may be more than that. And McLaren has said no. So, I mean, and they were the ones that were very vehement and came out and said, look, this story doesn't have any merit. Get out of here with it. So until that happens, I can't imagine the McLaren board wanting to sell, particularly now that they've kind of come out of that financial quagmire that they were in before. If Audi or Porsche wants to come in with a works engine deal, that I'm on board for. But outright ownership, I don't see it happening. And Zach is very busy. I would say that to answer his other question. He's all over the place in sports cars, in his beer hockey league. He's a busy guy.
I think for the past couple of years, too, there's been so many Porsche, Audi, McLaren, RedBull rumors that it's all over the place all the time, and I will not believe anything until it's actually official.
Yeah.
Comes straight from those organizations at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
All speculation.
Yep. All right. Thank you, Deanna. And now we'll move into our weekly awards section. And as always, we're going to start off with the Rubbish Award. So, Andy, why don't you lead us off?
Yeah, as I kind of mentioned this one before, this one will be kind of painful because I really like Sebastian Vettel. But he was by far the worst thing I saw this weekend. It's probably time to at least give it a think on calling time on his career. The body language is bad. The car looks like it's all over the place. Even when the car is decent, sometimes you can't keep it from crashing anyway. And this is not helping. So just a weekend to put in the bin for Seb and Aston Martin as a whole.
Yeah, I'll pile on a little bit. I was kind of deciding between Aston Martin or just Latifi. Well, Latifi finished the race today, so I'm going to give rubbish to Aston Martin as a whole. John was kind of like me, but he went the easy route, and he's saying Aston Martin and Latifi. So he combined his. Deanna, who do you got for your rubbish award?
So mine's Aston Martin, and I came up with this list earlier today, but here's everything that happened to them this weekend. So Seb went out in FP1 with a reliability issue of some sort and then missed FP2 because of that. Then he got on a scooter at the end of FP1 and was fined 5,000 euros for that, or pounds, whatever it is. Then in FP3, Seb crashed. Then in Q1, Stroll crashed with Latifi and got a grid penalty for that. Then Vettel didn't make it out of Q1. Then during the early part of the race, Seb goes wide into the gravel and falls towards the back. Then Seb spins and crashes and DNFs. Then Stroll pits 3 times, somehow miraculously ends up in the points, but then proceeds to get himself a 5-second time penalty. He kind of pushes Bottas wide. That didn't go anywhere, but then is passed by Bottas, Gasly, and Zhou. And the only reason he didn't finish behind Schumacher is because Schumacher was being lapped by Leclerc. So built him up that 5-second buffer. So absolute disaster.
Sounds like an eventful
That's
weekend.
a rubbish award if I've ever heard one.
Excellent detail. All right, for analysis paralysis, I think we're all on the same page. I'll give it to you first, Andy. What do you got?
Yeah, this one's going to go out to Alpine, and specifically the strategy with Fernando Alonso. I didn't get what they were aiming for at all. His only option was to try to somehow be able to extend on pace on older hard tires. It obviously didn't work, and it blew up on them big time. Weekend that was looking so good went so bad so quickly. Ouch.
Deanna?
I'm actually going to continue my pile on Aston Martin.
Oh, okay.
So Stroll, they onto that first safety car, they cycled him through the mediums. They put it on the mediums and put it again for hards. But that second safety car came out, and then, I guess it was the safer choice to pit for a new set of hards. But they lost track position to 3 separate drivers. And then we saw Albon go to the end, so I think it would have been worth it to push that risk, because then he might have actually finished in the bottom bit of the points there. So that just seemed like a strange... The 3 pit stop strategy was strange.
Yeah, when he first did that, I was like, did they just find a loophole here? And quick medium, then hards on a safety car? But then they pit him again. I was like, I'm confused. But
yeah. And I thought he wasn't going to lose track position when he pitted the second time, but I went back and looked at it and did. So it was like, strange.
Yeah. John was with you, Andy, with Alpine. He said, what the hell was the thought process here? And that was actually a really good point for Aston Martin, but I'm going to pile on Alpine for analysis paralysis. All right, Dark Horse. Deanna, what you got?
I think the close to consensus pick, Alexander Albon.
Yep. John is with you. I am with you as well. And Andy, you're different, I think.
Yeah, now that I think about Albon, he's probably the right pick. But, I'll go with my original thought that I had 12 hours ago, and I'll say Daniel Ricciardo for P6 at his home race.
Homer.
A little bit, maybe. Fair point. At his home race after the horrible start to the season. Also, honorable mention to Russell and Mercedes for riding the ship on race day and for taking advantage of the others' issues, mainly Max Verstappen.
Fair enough. And then a driver of the day. I'm going to start off, and I'm going to say Charles Leclerc. And if you thought I'd say anybody different, you must be listening to us for the first time.
Nope.
Yeah. Deanna, who you got?
Charles Leclerc.
John has Charles Leclerc, and Andy.
I will make this a clean sweep because other than one little spin in Friday practice, tell me what the guy did wrong at all this weekend. I can't.
Yep. Absolutely crushed it. All right, so for prediction results, John led the way this week with 4 total points, which, quick note, I clearly read the article I saw wrong.
They literally took out quarters.
I know. And well, even in the preview, after I said it, I'm like, I thought, is he the faster or slower? I think I'm going slower, but then I'm like, it doesn't really make sense why it'd be slower because of the corners. Maybe it's the new car. I don't know. And I was very wrong.
Yeah.
That was very evident right away. So, yeah, oh well. So John got 4 points. He had the pole time. He got P1 of the podium correct. He had the Leclerc fastest lap. And then bonus pick, he had Ocon in P7. And then all three of us finished with 2 points apiece. Me and Andy got pole position. I had P1. Deanna, you had P1. Deanna, you got the fastest lap time, so nice job there. And then Andy, you got the Ferrari power retiring first. So nice pick there. So now for the season standings and predictions, we got John in first place with 9, Deanna in second with 8, myself in third with 7, and Andy bringing up the rear with 6. But it is a tight race and plenty of time to go for that to get mixed up. So coming up next, we have Imola, which is 2 weeks away. So unless some big news breaks, probably won't hear from us for about a week and a half when we'll preview that episode, myself and Andy. So any final thoughts on F1's first successful trip back to Melbourne in quite some time? Deanna?
I think going back to Melbourne was amazing. It was fantastic to see such a great big crowd. We've been seeing that in Austin and Silverstone, so it's definitely F1's growing, but it's kind of growing everywhere, which is awesome to see. So it's fun to see those huge crowds in Australia's biggest sporting event ever.
Yep. And yeah, Melbourne is it's such an awesome place. I would love to go down there for a race one time because it looked really good on TV.
Andy, I mean, for an atmosphere, you really couldn't ask for more. The fans were into it the entire weekend. A lot of papaya hats I saw in the stands, which made me happy as a McLaren fan. I saw some of the cardboard cutouts of the drivers' heads. I saw a video of people singing Daniel Ricciardo's song.
Was that on the train?
The white stripes on the train on the way back from the race. So, I mean, imagine being some other guy who didn't know what was going on and you're in that train car. I've been there, done that. So I get both sides of it. Yeah, it's just an amazing atmosphere. The Aussie fans are great. It was so nice that they were able to let everybody in. They got their race. They're still working on that track layout, and these new cars are helping. They will eventually get this thing to where that we'll really get a cracker overtake race. But this is more than a successful event. F1 is back in Australia, and it was wonderful to see.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I love the Australian Grand Prix. Definitely missed it these last couple of years, so good to see him back there. And just overall, had an awesome weekend yet again. I do love, as we mentioned on the preview episodes, I love these late night Saturday races. I just, enjoy staying up late, making a cup of coffee at 10, 11 o'clock at night, maybe a RedBull vodka. But I had a great time, and then I couldn't fall asleep for a while, even after the race was over at 2 a.m. Because my adrenaline was pumping a little bit after seeing CharlesLeclerc dominate yet again. So hopefully many more of those races to come. But I think that's all we have here, so we'll talk to you all soon. And Andy, take it away, sir.
As always, may all your laps be fast.